Next up, we have the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Belgium, Didier Reynders, who is going to be speaking about energy as a driver of regional integration. Please give a warm welcome to Didier Reynders.
So thank you very much, first of all, for your invitation and the opportunity to say some words about the energy situation, maybe more for a political point of view, if I may, and maybe more so as Foreign Minister, because, of course, we have some discussions about energy with some specialists, having maybe the capacity to discuss about the right mix in energy. It's maybe not my first business. I will try to say some words about other kind of issue, because politics, maybe also in this region, is the art of the possible. The science is the art of the impossible, and industry, and you will discuss maybe that, the craft of reconciling the two. Energy mixes in the past have not so much been a question of choice and strategy than an issue of what could be procured, afforded, and secured at a given moment in time. But scientists have radically modified the deal over the past years and decades, offering us unconventional gas, hydrogen energy, solar, photovoltaic, wind and tides, beetroot and sugarcane, domestic garbage, to go back to the question of creating the ideal mix of speakers, maybe, and panelists also during your presentation. I happen to be one of the odd arms out here today, being neither an inventor nor an investor, and occupying government functions that do not deal directly with planning, energy, transportation, or the environment. But I said, I do certainly not feel out of place in this forum as a foreign minister, because planning and energy in this region, but maybe like in many other regions in the world, is never completely separated from regional and global diplomatic concerns. The recent acceleration in technological exploitation processes like deep sea, shale and tar sands extraction has already brought about far-reaching energy-related geostrategic change in the world, both in the conventional and non-conventional fuel sectors. The US has now become the largest producer of gas, ahead of Russia, all the while China was becoming the world's largest importer, ahead of the US and soon India. This, in turn, transformed China into a global energy player as a major stakeholder in developments in Latin America or the Gulf region. It is now the customer of choice for Qatar's brand new gas liquefaction capacities and a pioneering investor in Iraq. In Africa, too, China's thirst for gas and the arrival of new producers, including Mozambique and Tanzania, will have important consequences for the continent's political and economic fabric, as a third or more of all sub-Saharan African countries will soon see a majority of their income emanate from energy resources. Effects in Australia and Europe will also be substantial, with the latter's relative lack of unconventional resources likely to remain the number one driver behind innovation in renewables and in energy efficiency. And this is not only about continents, as the Arctic, that could host 30% of global undiscovered gas reserves, may also undergo transformative economic and environmental developments due to technological innovation and the melting of the ice cap. But being in Tel Aviv today, after 3 intense days of official meetings with heads of states and governments and with colleagues in the region, I could not fail to say a few words about the way the current energy revolution is likely to affect this wonderful part of the world. The challenges, of course, but also the opportunities. To take the single example of LNG, I had the pleasure to host a large conference on the current game-changing technological developments around energy in the Eastern Mediterranean in the Egmont Palace in Brussels last week, and to stress how much the approximately 3,500 billion cubic meters of recoverable natural gas in the Levant Basin could change not only the environmental and economic deal in the Middle East, but also its diplomatic and security landscape. This region has been taunted by conflicts for many decades now. So what will the new energy discoveries bring? Promise or peril? Boost or bust? Will it lead to regional cooperation, political stability, and ultimately a much-needed growth and jobs impetus? Or will it only exacerbate existing tensions and possibly create a new source of conflict, thus squandering the chance for an economic bonanza? I do not know the answer, but I was born in the same year and country as the Treaty of Rome, because this was negotiated in Belgium, and cannot thus help but compare the situation here with the very beginning of the European Union, the European coal and steel community. Time and circumstances are very different, of course, but there is probably a common theme. On the 9th of May 1950, the French Foreign Minister, Robert Schuman, put forward his now famous Schuman Declaration. Barely 5 years after the Second World War, he put forward a vision of regional cooperation in key sectors: energy, coal, and steel. These economic sectors were seen as vital for waging war and for economic growth. So close cooperation would firmly interlink the economic phase of the region and thus cement peace between the two historic enemies, France and Germany. The first president of the High Authority of the European Coal and Steel Community was a fellow Belgian, Paul-Henri Spaak. His Spaak report later led to the European Economic Community. Now, more than 60 years later, the EU won the Nobel Prize of Peace, and the 9th of May, the day the Schuman Declaration was published, is now Europe Day, celebrated by all Europeans. This brings me back to the subject of regional cooperation and the opportunities offered by the gas discoveries to that end. In fact, if the countries of the regions want to benefit from it, it seems they will be obligated to work together. Israel is the furthest ahead in developing its gas fields. Its biggest fields, Leviathan and Tamar, are neighboring Aphrodite, the first and only Cypriot gas field to date. Moreover, Israel has decided to export up to 40% of its production. So why not a joint LNG facility and some sharing the huge investment costs? Governments on both sides sent out promising signals to that end, and I hope more will be said on this subject later on today. Another of the largest business projects identified so far will be the development of the marine gas field just 36 kilometers offshore Gaza. This would bring in $1 billion investment, make the Palestinian economy energy independent, and create opportunities for energy-demanding industries. These include cement and steel, but also the production of drinking water out of seawater, a rare, life-saving commodity in the area, as you know. A reinvigorated Palestinian economy would certainly add to the stability and security of Israel. In all, it looks like the countries of the regions are intrinsically bound to each other if they want to develop gas resources beneficially for their country, their economy, and their citizens. Each country has a key to the solution, and neither can act alone. Once again, development, stability, and peace in this corner of the Middle East is famously a global question and a vital issue for Europe. Thanks to the dynamic leadership of John Kerry, new peace negotiations are currently underway with an important economic chapter in which energy should play a key role. Belgium, as I had the pleasure to recently inform my US colleague, but also Tony Blair and regional leaders, is willing to lend its support to this economic chapter of the negotiations. Indeed, as I said before, should the current talks prove a success, I'm ready to organize a business conference for Belgian and European companies in Brussels aimed at lifting the Palestinian economy out of dependency on foreign aid. It must be possible with some businessmen and women from Israel, but also for the Palestinian territories to discuss about the conditions, the tools, the need to invest later, maybe after a political agreement, in this region to work together. The regional integration is maybe the best solution to develop the entire region. As we prepare to commemorate in April and many other places in Belgium and in Europe the centennial of the beginning of the First World War and in and around Waterloo, the bicentennial of the end of the Napoleonic Wars, Belgium can never forget the price of war and the reward of cooperation, and is willing to be a facilitator along with our European partners. But it's not only Europe's and Belgium's diplomatic experience and stake in the Middle East that could help us contribute to a gas-centered political game change. History, including the 1973 oil crisis, has also shaped my country into a cradle for research, development, and innovations in the fields of energy and fuel generation and transportation. This has happened to such an extent that the ports of Zeebrugge and Antwerp are now harboring, if I may use the word in this context, some of the world's most technologically advanced terminals and processing facilities. Fluxys, state-of-the-art LNG truck loading operation in Zeebrugge, and Exmar's LNG bunkering project with the port of Antwerp are among recent exciting examples. What companies like Fluxys, Tractable Suez, or Exmar, and our well-known dredging and offshore engineering companies have achieved has allowed Belgium to become Northern Europe's natural gas gateway. And these technologies are now enabling groundbreaking projects all over the world, like Exmar FLNG solutions in Colombia, British Columbia, and in this region of the contribution of Fluxys are the snipers to pipeline technology. Beyond gas, Antwerp now also hosts the largest PM fuel cell in the world, thanks to Solvay, and our North Sea coastline hosts some of the most powerful and on and offshore wind turbines. Ladies and gentlemen, the technology decisions which will be made by new and increasingly significant players, both importers and exporters around the world, will have a profound impact on global energy markets, but also far-reaching geostrategic effects. Major changes in Europe in recent years have demonstrated that a greater diversity of fuel choices, a wide range of pipeline and electricity grid networks, enhanced infrastructure, as well as liberalization, unbundling, and meaningful anti-monopoly laws and regulations have led to greater energy security and more efficient markets. This has helped these markets overcome past rigidities, distortions, and potential political leverage. Having learned largely through trial and errors, we Europeans do not really have lessons to give, but we can share an experience. as it becomes clear that the energy discoveries in these regions hold an enormous promise for all countries, communities, companies and citizens involved, but that for this promise to be realized, regional cooperation will be necessary. We are more than ever willing to share that experience. Cooperation is a precondition to reap maximum benefits from the newly found resources. And each country holds a necessary piece of the puzzle. It occurs to me that a maximal solution might involve part of all the options discussed before. An interconnected network of LNG facilities and pipelines through the region will increase flexibility for all producers and consumers alike. Regional cooperation in challenging times demands visionary politicians. The way peace through coal in Europe was designed, built and operated in the 1950s by the likes of Robert Schuman of Paul Spark have said, I have no doubt that peace through gas in this region will also find its own generation of forward-looking, open-minded and technology-savvy leaders and entrepreneurs. You have the opportunity with such a discussions about energy to try to convince maybe new generations that it will be possible after a political agreement to have more and more joint venture to develop some new fields, energy, but maybe in other sectors. I hope that it will be the case. I repeat, if it's possible in a first step to have a political agreement. That's maybe the only one choice. And I repeat, we don't have any lessons to give coming from Europe, but we have taken the time to organize 2 world wars before to think about a regional integration. It's maybe useful in many other parts of the world to think about such an integration earlier. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Didier Reynders, the Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium.